Well, hello. Welcome to Orchid Blooms podcast. Welcome back, bloomers. My name is Orchid Brown. I am your host with the Orchid Blooms podcast. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter, at Orchid Eye Brown. I am sure you all know what this podcast episode was going to be about, based on all of the topics that I have discussed for this season. Today's podcast episode, we will be talking about cut-off game. Some of us are experiencing a huge development in our mindset, where we are choosing our mental health, our self-care, and putting ourselves first. The time for being selfless and sacrificing ourselves is over. We're no longer as tolerant, delusional, or hopeful in face of disrespect. We see who you are and we believe you. It sounds harsh, but kind people tend to forgive easily and neglect the red flags in hopes that they would become their potential. We see the good in people. We want the best for people. And sometimes we just really want people to realize their greatness, the greatness that we as kind people see in so many. The better version you see in them, you wish they saw it in themselves. Once that rose-colored glasses falls off, we have to admit to ourselves that the version we thought we saw was an idea, was fabricated, and you are finally able to see who that person really is, and things will never be the same again. There is only so much an individual can take before they have reached their limit and are just completely done. A lot of people get back together in relationships and friendships for their own reasons. I cannot tell you what those reasons are. You all know it. But that relationship and friendship is never truly the same again. You get a different version every time because you are experiencing their indifference in different phases. In these phases, you are burning a different idea of this person and replacing it with the truth. Now, I personally go through the 5 stages of a breakup before it's completely done. And it's odd because I didn't realize I was doing that until I met certain people who kind of did the same thing. Have you ever seen relationships where, the person gets out of the relationship and they're just done. They're ready to move on. They're ready to jump into another relationship. They're not affected at all. Time will pass and they're not mourning. They were already checked out of the relationship before it was over. I always thought that was odd. It's like, why did you stay when going through this process of breaking that string that connected you with this person? Why put the other person through that? Just to turn around and realize that I was that girl. And I didn't know it. But I feel that some people might have gone through the phase towards the end of the relationship or friendship, and then they would then go through the phase again after it was completely over. So it seems that in their rawest vulnerability, which was after it was over, you started to really see the effects of this person leaving their lives, of letting go of this person. It was just in your face. So you feel that 5 stage of breakup that I'm about to get into, you feel that they were completely blindsided. They didn't understand what was going on. But I said to a friend, an acquaintance actually, years ago when I used to work in a call center, I remembered saying to this person when I was walking away from somebody and we were talking at work in the break room, and I said to him, I've made the decision to let go of something that was not good for me. And while I was making this decision, and now that I have taken the steps and walked out that door and never looked back, I find that I'm in this limbo where my heart and my mind are fighting with each other. And I said, my mind has made a decision that this situation is not healthy and it's not good for me. And now I have to go through the process of allowing my heart to catch up with my mind. And so that was one of the most profound things I said out loud, because even though I knew the answer of what was going on with me after the breakup, after the separation, it didn't click why I still felt so much pain, but I just knew in my heart that I made the right decision until I said it out loud. I'm just one of those people. I need to talk out my feelings. I need to talk out what I'm going through for me to completely process it. I'm really not one of those people that just shoves it down inside of me and allows it to just unleash itself 6 months to a year later and going through the mourning phase when I should be living my best life. You know what I mean? You see guys do it all the time. Like, they get out of a relationship, they're super excited, they start dating a girl, they start dating around, and then like 6 months later, they start to really feel it. They start talking about, oh, I miss my ex, blah, blah, blah. And you always wonder, like, why didn't you choose to go through this mourning phase? Why did you decide to do the opposite? Because you didn't want to face your feelings, you didn't want to face the situations, you didn't want to learn from the mistakes, you decided to ignore it. You decided to just go off and act like you don't care and you a bad boy. You know what I mean? And then 6 months later, they're like, cry me a river. At this point, that's great that you miss her, but the difference between men and women, I find, is that women, they actually take the time to feel through what they're feeling, understand what they're feeling, and coming to the conclusion that they have made the right choice. And then you see them going out and having their best time. Then you see them pull out the revenge dress and their banging body. You see them truly taking the time to get to know other people because they are ready to move on. They have released themselves from that painful situation. But for men, it's like, it's opposite. You guys decide to get start dressing good, smelling good, shit you couldn't do in a relationship. Damn. You couldn't wash your ass every day? No. But now that she's gone, you want to wash your ass. Anywho, let's get back to 5 stages of a breakup. The first stage is denial. The second stage is anger. The third stage is bargaining. The fourth stage is depression. And the fifth stage is acceptance. This is true for relationships, friendships, and workplace. And I say workplace because we spend most of our lifetime working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes more. It's a relationship, a transactional relationship. And don't worry, I am still debating on doing a podcast episode strictly for transactional relationships. I'm working on it. I'm just meditating on that for now, but it will come. It will. So back to the topic. Just like normal relationships, we go through the same stage in the workplace. Monetary rewards keep us in a toxic environment, as well as fear. Fear keeps us in relationships and friendships for longer than required. We stay with people that no longer serves us and holds on to the idea of some better appearing within that person. You are choosing to love and to be loyal to that idea. Those feelings from your selected person can fuel the ideas as well as your hopes in them. Eventually, you start to see it all as breadcrumbing. The realization that you have been deceived leaves a bite like no other. You feel like a fool for not seeing it before, and that experience changes you. Acceptance. When I started my new journey of cutting people off who betrayed me, who no longer served a purpose in my life, and felt they did not owe me an apology. They felt like they did not owe me an apology after betraying me or mistreating me the way that they did. It began with a friend. After going through the 5 stages with her while we were still friends, I was done, just done. I did not miss her at all. I did not feel the need to message her or had any thought of her whatsoever. When I did experience times of weakness, which are memories, it was always memories of times she had wronged me. It would confirm my decision. And to this day, I do not regret my choice. I would not go back for any reason in the world. I don't believe in looking backwards. I neglect to mention that for me, it was more of 6 stages. First, denial. Second, anger. Third, bargaining. Fourth, depression. Fifth, and this is the one that was not included in the first list I gave you, which was warning. And the 6th is acceptance. Going back to warning. With this friendship, this was the first time I've ever cut someone off, and it was my decision. It wasn't that I just let time go by and we just drifted apart. It wasn't even ghosting. It was just a clear, clean cut. The warning phase for me is more about giving you your final chance. It is also a test to see if you value me or not. It helps me feel less guilty on what I'm about to do, because again, I'm going to feel bad because I truly thought of you as a friend. And if I truly thought of you as a friend, it's going to hurt, and I am going to feel guilty. I am going to question, why couldn't I have just maybe communicated better? But at the end of the day, I did all that I could. If the person was not reciprocating, there's really nothing else I can do except walk away. I did not want to feel any regrets. I will feel no need to hold on to hope or the idea of you. I just check the fuck out. I don't feel bad giving up on you. All that is left is acceptance. Accepting who you really are, what you offer, and what you accept for yourself. And this is very important. A lot of people who mistreat the people that are good to them in their lives do not feel that they deserve such goodness, such grace. And because they don't feel like they deserve it, they try to sabotage it. They try to ruin it. They try to hurt that person. How dare you love me unconditionally? How dare you? I am a disgusting person. That is what they're thinking. I'm a horrible person. So what something must be wrong with you for wanting to love someone like me, for wanting to be my friend. And there was a girl who I cut off who was a friend as well, like maybe after this one, but like years later. And I remembered she said that to me as she was walking away from me. And you know this story because I've mentioned it in the previous podcast episode of a girl that I prayed to God would just release from my life because I'm really tired of like cutting people off. I'm really tired of having this conversation. I don't want to explain anything. Just pack your shit and get the fuck out. You know what I mean? But in that situation, I just left it to the Lord. And the Lord came through. 2 months later, boom, it was done. She was right in front of my face. But this was a conversation that we were having. And as she was basically friendship breaking up with me, I was completely supportive because she doesn't know that I prayed about this. And I asked God to do this for me, and God came through. And I was trying really hard not to be like, yes, Jesus. Yes, Lord. I was trying so hard. But I had to celebrate after she left. So I had to keep it in. But during that time when she was telling me that she was making this decision for herself, I was like, you know what? Good for you. I wish you love. I wish you happiness. I wish you friendship that really works for you. I completely support your decision. And she like broke down and cried and was lying all over my floor, rolling around in her dirty clothes. But anywho, as she, composed herself and she was about to walk out my door with her son, she turned around and she said to me, I really did not deserve you. You deserve a better friend. I was never a good friend to you. And I just looked at her and I said, I know, which is why I'm letting you go. I'm releasing you. And she just kind of walked out my door and she stood at my doorway. And in my mind, I was like, close the door, bitch. But, I have to in that moment realize that she's going through this. She made this decision and she's going through this and she's doing what is right for her. And I knew in that moment, looking into her eyes, that she was feeling broken. She has always been broken. And this stemmed from childhood, from her trauma and her experience. So when something good comes in her life, she doesn't want it. But if something bad comes in her life, she loves it. She just can't live without it. But in this situation, I guess she just did not want to keep feeling guilty for not being a better version of herself. And I understood that in that moment. And I was like, listen, girl, I just gave her the look. And hopefully she understood that the look I'm giving you is saying that now you will never have to feel that pressure. Now you can find people that will not hold you accountable. You say that this is what you want in life, and then you become a hypocrite and like go against it by doing the complete opposite of what you are seeking in life. Go find yourself friends who are hypocrites, friends that actually don't like you, friends that are going to treat you like shit. That way you can feel that you are deserving, because a lot of people out there are addicted to abuse. They really are. But I couldn't say that to her because I didn't want to continue the conversation. She made the decision. She doesn't realize that this is a decision I prayed for. And so I just needed to leave it alone and hope that through the rest of her life and all the experiences that she was going to go through, that she would learn this lesson on her own without me having to give her the answer. Because if I gave her the answer, she won't listen. And then all of a sudden, years will pass and she's like, oh my God, I came up with this answer. I can't stand those people. All of a sudden, I have the answer, and they're just repeating back to you what you already said to them years ago. I just can't. But anywho, I learned this lesson based on that situation. And it's something that I did not learn during my cutoff phase. Like the first cutoff I've ever done that, really impacted me. Not impacted me in an emotional way, but just brought me peace. But I'll leave that there. Acceptance is to see you for who you really are. Just to repeat that part. Accepting that you hold no place in my life, not even as an acquaintance. And mind you, this woman, and I mentioned in a previous podcast episode, she did come back trying to gain back the friendship. It's almost as if she forgot her reasoning for walking away. All of a sudden, she's a changed woman. I'm like, bitch, please. So at this point, I kind of had to like tell her off, but not in a mean way. Just kind of pointing out all of the things that I know she did that I never brought up. Because I'm really not that person. You can do something to me and I won't really say anything. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until it's time that I open that door and I let you leave, and I never open that door again for you. And when you do come back, I'm going to start listing everything to remind you that you had made the right decision to free me from your existence. Thank you to all you bitches. I know it sounds like an I hate you letter with this podcast episode, but I'm just expressing what I truly felt before, in the middle, and after. But this is not an I hate you letter. I wish you the best, just far away from me. That hard no and that high boundary that I have will keep you far away from me. Time would heal acceptance. Acceptance is freeing you from the bondage of that person. The strings that connected you to that person will sever, and you will never see that person the same way again. I have failed this test after the first one I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast episode with other friendships and one relationship. We don't master the cutoff game the first time. We still need practice. We might have gotten lucky the first time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be lucky all the time. It's practice. The only relationship that affected me to my core, especially in the cutoff game category, was cutting off my mother. The plan was 6 months to a year. But when that came up, the 6 months, I realized that my healing may take longer. And then a year came up and I realized I needed more time. People have tried to force me to reconnect with my mother, but anxiety came over me and I am reminded that I was just not ready. I did not realize how broken I was until I had to face my pain. An acquaintance said to me once, before I even cut off my mother, he says, you behave like a woman that has gotten her heart broken, like a man must have truly broken you. And I didn't understand why he was saying that to me. And I was like, I hope this motherfucker isn't interested, because I am not interested. If you've been trying this whole time and I have not been reciprocating, please get the message. Please. You've been friend zoned. That's as far as it's going to go for us. But when he said that to me, I just kind of smiled at him and I looked at him and I said, really now? You think a man is the only one that can break a woman? And he says, yeah, clearly you just seem to hate men. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm just not interested in you, but I don't hate men. So I said, okay, I guess you're right. And he's like, so a man did break your heart? I said, no, but let's go along with your theory and I'll let you keep thinking that a man is who broke my heart. And he's like, but who's broken your heart? I said, a woman broke my heart. I didn't go any further with that conversation because that's not a conversation I wanted to have with an acquaintance, someone that I did not really want to be vulnerable with, and someone that I did not really see us being long-term friends. This was just a moment. He's only here for some reason that pertains to intimacy, but I'm just not interested. So I'm just waiting for him to clue in and be on his merry way. But when I said that out loud to him, I knew it was 100% the truth because my mother broke my heart multiple times over the years, from childhood to adulthood. And that left me broken. My trauma is my mother. Friendships and intimate relationships have no merit in a parental bond. I can never say that ending a friendship or ending an intimate relationship is more hurtful than having to cut off a parent, someone that you grew up loving unconditionally, someone who should have loved you unconditionally. That's a whole level of brokenness that you feel. The amount of time that is required to heal from everything that you've been through from childhood till now, it's much worse. It really is the most excruciating feeling that you can go through. I was just broken. I felt like I was drowning being in my mother's presence, as if I was withering away. My healing became more important than the connection itself, which was not working. It did not serve me. It took me 5 years to be able to be around my mother again. Even then, I came back indifferent. My walls were up because I could never be that depleted again. I made sure I saw everything for what it was. I saw her for who she was. By the end of 5 years and reconnecting with my mother, I felt that 5 years was just not enough. But my cup was half full, and I learned how to replenish it every single time I interacted with her. Some cutoff requires everything from you. It is all for your sanity. Because if your mind is broken, your heart is finished. So I had to grow cold to survive because I just couldn't handle it anymore. With the cutoff game, I forgot to mention the downside. The downside is that the tests will continue until you get it right consistently, until you change something about yourself. You need to resolve some issues and commit to wanting better for yourself. I told an ex-friend once that she kept attracting relationships and friendships with the same person, but different faces. And this happened to be one of the stories I mentioned in this podcast episode of the lady that, I prayed that God would release from my life. I said this to her. I said, every single guy that I see you approach that you're interested in kind of reminds me of all the exes you had before. And you seem to cling to certain friendships the most based on how toxic they are. All of them ended up being the exact same with the exact same results for her. Every single time, they were just different people. She kept failing the tests. So I ended up watching her chase her own tail and end up right back at the beginning every single time. And it wouldn't stop until she finally passed the test, which, by the way, she never did. She was making no effort about passing this test. This test would have changed her life completely. She just had to receive the blessings that would come from passing this test, but she did not believe she deserved it. So she kept failing the test. Her failures caused her misery. I really wanted to focus on that because there are certain traits that contributes to attracting toxic partners and friendships. One of the items on the list is low self-esteem. Second on the list is unresolved trauma. Third, poor boundaries. Fourth, need for excitement. And fifth, unconscious patterns. I passed the first test and failed the others, but I did not see it as a failure. I can only forgive you once. That second chance was grace. It was given to you as a chance to become who you say you are. Once you show me you have no redeemable qualities, I accept it and move on. When it comes to the list that I provide for attracting toxic partners, the items on that list that I resonate with would be unresolved trauma due to my mother and poor boundaries. I'll think about explaining those two in this podcast episode. We'll see. Let's continue. The cutoff game isn't easy. It is hard. It requires patience. As much as people pride themselves in their cutoff game, it is not something to brag about. And trust me, I would love to brag about it, but I can't. I have strong cutoff game. I'll put that out there. That's my bragging. But it also makes me cold. Once you get to acceptance with me, you will never see warmth again. And if you witness it, it is from afar. The cutoff game can be dangerous. I try not to traumatize others with this skill, and it is a skill if I've practiced it for so long, which is why I added the warning. And this is something that I did from the beginning because my goal in life is not to traumatize people. It was put in place so that you also understand what is about to happen. I don't need to blindside anyone. I want you to know exactly why you ended up here. That is the extent of my mercy. If you do not take it seriously, then it is on you. I have done enough. I can't make you value yourself, but I will definitely show my love and value for myself by walking away. Doing this podcast episode kind of forced me to face the realization that I attract toxic people. And I know the reasons why I attract toxic people because, again, I grew up with a toxic person. And because I was so tolerant with that toxic person growing up, and because I always made excuses for that toxic person growing up, I had poor boundaries, as I mentioned. And I also had unresolved issues because, again, I would bury whatever I was feeling or whatever was happening inside of me and never addressed it. Now, with my growth and development, I addressed it. Let's just say when push comes to shove, I had to cuss her out. And I told her everything that I needed to tell her and got a lot of shit off of my chest. And that was me working through the process of healing. As I said, it took 5 years. And even when I came back to be back into this person's life, because the decision that I came to in my mind is, if I can't love my mother, then no one else will. And that was a reason why I came back after 5 years. But it was a process. It was so much work, and it was it was so exhausting. But during those times of exhaustion, I forced myself to use my voice to communicate what I was feeling, and really made sure I said it nice and slow so that she could understand every single word I am saying, going all the way back to childhood. And that was actually a part of my healing process, learning how to speak up for myself. Poor boundaries allowed a lot of people to gain free reign in my life. I mean, I allowed them to do whatever the hell they wanted because I did not care. It's not because I wanted them to accept me. It's just I didn't have the energy to care enough to be like, stop. I don't really like that. I wasn't even really paying attention. I was like, if it makes you happy, do what you got to do. That's literally how I thought. But then certain things started adding up. And now the poor boundaries that I had was now being used against me. It was causing me to be in difficult positions, the positions I didn't want to be in. And so it's difficult to start the process of building boundaries when you started a relationship or a friendship or started a job with no boundaries at all. And a lot of people don't realize that. Trying to force an individual to now grow accustomed to the boundaries that you're setting for yourself, you're going to get a lot of pushbacks. You're going to be in a lot of fights. But if you had started that boundary from the beginning, the person would have gotten used to it, and you wouldn't have had to be in the position that you are right now. And that is what I struggled with. So poor boundaries was the biggest issue that I have. And because of that, I attracted a lot of toxic people. So now I had to make sure that my cutoff game strength was strong. Because if I keep making the mistakes of not having boundaries from the beginning, then I was going to continue to suffer. And then I'm always going to end up in the exact same situation where it seems like I'm chasing my tail with every single person I meet. And the cutoff game was a blessing to me because of those poor boundaries. So I wanted to share that. I didn't want to originally. I wanted to just kind of list that poor boundaries was something that attracted a lot of toxic partners in my life because I did not have any boundaries with my mother, and she's a very toxic person. And so it kind of made room for friends. And this goes back to the previous podcast episode and why I asked that question. The important question was, do we have the same red flags, standards for relationships that we do friendships? Or do we pick and choose which one we have these boundaries with? And that's why the red flag episode was so important. You had to understand and realize that a relationship and a friendship, they both have the same red flags. Why is it that you allow the relationship to continue to go further and then maybe cut off a friend who's exhibiting the exact same behavior. Or you keep the friend and you cut off the partner. But it's the same boundary, but you're being selective. It's almost as if it's okay for this to happen here, but this can't happen here. But it's the same red flags all around. If you're going to have poor boundaries in one aspect, you will in turn do the exact same thing in no matter what situation you're in, because you were never working or strengthening or maintaining those boundaries in all areas of your life. So that concludes this podcast episode. I just wanted to end this podcast episode by leaving you a warning. For cutoff game, be careful how you wield this weapon. It should only be used if you feel compromised. Other than that, it should not be a joke. It should not be a weapon. It should not be something to punish others. It's only when you feel you're being compromised. Thank you for supporting the Orchid Blooms podcast. Please subscribe, follow, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast episode or the podcast itself. We also have social media pages. Subscribe and follow Orchid Blooms YouTube channel, The Ambitious Obsession Network on Facebook, at The Ambitious Ops on Twitter, known as X, at The Ambitious Net on Instagram. Our website, taonetwork.ca. Please visit to read the Obsession blog. I also want to end this podcast episode by also saying that I will be taking a break after this episode, and I will go into the summer schedule of only producing 2 podcast episodes a month so that I can have a break. It gives me plenty of time to create more topics for the fall season, where we will return to weekly podcast episodes. And this summer, I just want to live my life. So you can definitely follow me on my personal social media pages and see all the things that I'm doing. And hopefully it entertains you. Don't forget to share this podcast episode with your family and your friends. And I hope you have a splendid day.